In this game, winners win, and I only back winners. Trainer Kenny McPeak is a proven winner, and his horses are in my portfolio. And now they can be in yours too. McPeak's champion horses and Derby hopefuls are now featured on Morning Line. With Morning Line, I don't just watch the race. I own the moment. I invest in champions. This is my edge. Buy, sell, trade, anytime. Morning Line. Own the game.
Hi, everyone. Ashley Mailloux, Nicole, Russo here with a preview for this Sunday at Oaklawn Park. I wanted to say Saturday, but it's going to be Sunday, March 1st. 2 graded stakes races. The feature obviously being the Grade 2 Rebel, but we're going to focus in on the Kentucky Oaks point race, the Grade 3 Honeybee. It'll kick off the late pick 4 sequence as race number 9, a mile and a 16th on the dirt. And we've become accustomed, Nicole, to these big fields at Oaklawn. This is not going to be any different than that with a field of 10, but kind of looking at the fillies in here that might take a lot of the spotlight, it does feel like the 2 towards the outside will take a lot of the betting support.
Absolutely. When you've got, a filly who's already a multiple stakes winner in Taken by the Wind, when you've got another filly who's a multiple stakes winner and who is an Eclipse finalist, and Explora coming in for Bob Baffert, who has made so many successful raids on Oaklawn over the years. I think those 2 will take a lot of attention. And some of, the other fillies in here, like Search Party, who was a back-to-back winner at Oaklawn, could wind up offering you a little bit of value. That being said, this is a big field. The Oaklawn route to the Kentucky Oaks has been very productive. I think we're going to see a lot of fillies in this race getting a solid big field experience to build from and to move forward from.
We'll take a look at the Timeform US pace projection. You mentioned Explora with her resume. She's quick. We expect her to be involved once again. And I think this is pretty much spot on, especially when you even go back to the Mockingbird or the Martha Washington. The 3 Graces Free, she really wasn't having her best day last time out in the Martha Washington. She was ranked early on. She wasn't involved. I would expect come Sunday, she will be more forward than we saw last time out.
I think certainly so. I think her being so ranked early on was perhaps a result of them trying to rate her in her first time going 2 turns. It, kind of backfired. She was ranked. She came up empty. I think this time they might let her roll away from post 3 in this big field, and she could be a player on that front end.
And we will note here that the 4 Newtown Pike does have the LP flag attached to her. We'll talk a little bit more about her in detail, but let's dive right into it with the number 1, Take Charge Macy. This one out of the Peter Miller barn. She was 3rd on her debut. The winner came back to win next time out, which bodes well, and so did she. In her second career start, she was able to graduate, and I think the thing that I liked most about it was the stretch out seemed to help her. She did sort of come back to the field a little bit in those final stages, but I do think it was a pretty productive race.
Absolutely. You've got to like that she went from 6 furlongs to a mile and a 16th and handled it very well at this track. Besides, she was well placed in that, raced in 3rd after the half, was never far off it. And I do think that she'll need to use herself early from the rail here to secure good position. And we could see her involved, maybe not in that first flight, but in the second flight, keeping them honest for sure.
The number 2, Sneaky Good, up next. This one for Brad Cox. Now, she participated in the Forward Gal. She's got 2 of her 3 races in Florida. This felt like maybe a couple of things, Nicole. Maybe to keep her away from her stablemate, On Time Girl. I believe Ellen J. Foxwoods has another horse in that race, that being the Devona Dale Saturday at Gulfstream. And the fact that that race would have been 1 turn. Maybe this is really what they want to do. They want to test her around 2 turns.
Well, certainly, and this is a great opportunity to do so. And you will get clues as to her class on Saturday when several of the fillies that she faced, not only in her Sandpiper win, but then in the Forward Gal when she was 3rd, On Time Girl, Imperatrice, Blazing Brat, when they come back and run in the Devona Dale. She's been closing into some fast fractions in her 1-turn races. The pace setup going longer, if they're not quite as sharp, will be key for her.
The 3 Graces Free, we talked about her a little bit with the Timeform US pace projection. Felt like, you know, regardless of how you look at the performance last time out, I at least had question marks around the fact that she can go 2 turns. She didn't answer that because I don't think she really was able to show much. And you mentioned maybe the decision to have her right. I also think that the post position really didn't help her, being drawn on the outside like that and trying to get position into the first turn. I think that sort of emphasized everything a little bit more and not in a beneficial way for her. So again, it's tough for me to see her getting the distance, but since then she's been able to work out and it seems like all systems go on her part.
Yeah, and a bullet work. So certainly showing what seems to be her natural speed in that work. As we discussed, perhaps the tactics last time, trying to get position from the outside post and then trying to get her to settle that first time going 2 turns. Sometimes fighting with the rider can sap more out of them than, the 2 turns would have if they just let her roll. So we'll see what kind of tactics they use when the gates open on Sunday here.
Absolutely. The number 4 Newtown Pike, she also exits the Martha Washington. We'll take a look at that stretch run now, but she was the runner up and she's never been shorter than 18-1 in her races. She was 27-1 here and she ran a great second place effort here when she was beaten by just a neck. She was rolling from off of it. And in terms of the fractions, I think the opening quarter helped her a little bit. They slowed it down at the half, but this is a really impressive run from a filly that, in my opinion, she's done nothing wrong, still isn't respected, and hopefully, at least I'm hoping, she'll be a good price on Sunday.
Yeah, a very likable filly, a very consistent filly who has taken a step forward in each of her starts while getting more distance each time. If you look at her speed figures and who she is facing, she has moved forward each time. No reason to think that she couldn't do so again on Sunday. And if she gets that pace in front of her, again, I just think this is a very likable filly.
The number 5, Nickel and Dime. She was the pace setter in the Martha Washington. We saw those final stretch run stages there just moments ago. She was third, and I think was a very credible third in the fact that, listen, she was another one stretching back out in distance. It was very different than her race at Churchill, where she just really controlled things and was able to get away with it on the front end. I think she's a little bit more pressured in the Martha Washington, and I have a tough time really thinking that she's going to get a huge share in here, maybe the winner's check in the end, Nicole, but she is interesting from a pace perspective, and she showed she can stick around.
Yeah, and she has stepped from maiden claiming company to compete with consistency at stakes. And I think part of that is, she seems to really like this track. She seems to have thrived at Oaklawn this winter.
Absolutely. And another horse that seems to have thrived at Oaklawn is the 6 Search Party. It took her 5 starts to graduate. She did that at Oaklawn, and she came back in the Martha Washington and was the winner. And I'll be honest, I didn't like her that day. I liked her stablemate and was disappointed with her effort, Nicole. But something has changed in her where the light bulb has gone on. Mark Cassie's having a tremendous meet at Oaklawn Park. So I don't think you can toss her based on what we've seen so far locally.
Absolutely. Another one who loves this track for, as you said, the red hot Mark Cassie barn. Overcame some traffic last time. She seems to break a little slow a lot of the time, get herself in a little trouble, but she seems to be able to overcome that. That being said, Mark Cassie, reading the track notes, he did tell Track Publicity, before he entered this race, that he was debating whether or not to run her back this quickly after the Martha Washington because he loves running them back. He loves running them when they're good. But he did say, the Martha Washington was delayed by the weather. She's a little bit of a later framed filly. She might need more time. So the fact that she is in this race, I think, says something about how he thinks she's doing. That being said, she might need the time.
Yeah, we'll certainly find out. And same thing can maybe be said about her stablemate, the 7 Counting Stars, who went off favorite in the Martha Washington and was, basically eased in that race towards the back of the pack as she never really got going. She sat mid-pack. She looked like she tried to make a move, Nicole, and she came up empty. And I wonder if it was the 2 races in December back-to-back where she was doing so well. They ran her off of those 13 days and she was able to win again. Maybe she needed to regroup. Maybe something went amiss. If she's anywhere near the morning line, I think if you're willing to gamble, we're in the nature of gambling, then she's probably an intriguing horse at 15-1. But obviously a lot of question marks around the Martha Washington performance.
Yeah, question marks for you and me, and frankly for Mark Cassie. Again, reading the track notes, he said, quote, "I have no idea." He said it was interesting that, the day after the races, on what was a busy weekend at Oaklawn, that she probably felt better and acted better than all of the other horses he, had run that weekend. So no, obvious physical excuse or anything. She looked like she was in good position and then just kind of stopped. So maybe draw a line through that and move on.
The 8 Classic Glide, a big price on the morning line at 30-1, exits a 5th place finish in the Rachel Alexandra. That was her first start as a 3-year-old. As a 2-year-old, it seemed like she was starting to figure things out a little bit later in the year once they got her onto the dirt. But I think from a figure standpoint, Nicole, I can't use her just because she's nowhere near some of the best, fillies in this race.
Yeah, she's nowhere near some of the others in this race, and frankly, she was nowhere near, one of the top fillies in this division, Bella Ballerina and the Rachel Alexandra. Wheeling back just 2 weeks after that, in which she just sort of ran evenly and was not a factor.
And then the number 9 Explorer here for Bob Baffert, who has had a lot of success going to Oaklawn Park with whatever it may be, fillies, Colton Geldings, you name it. This is a horse that comes off a 2nd place finish that I think folks are going to look at and maybe be disappointed in that effort. She was favored. It was just a field of 4. We'll take a look at the race, Nicole, and just want to get your thoughts on how this worked out for her. She went to the front. The fractions probably are what did her in the end.
Yeah, I think those fractions, when you look at it, 22 and change, 45 and change, going the mile at Santa Anita, I think that did do her in the end. It'll be a question of how much pressure she gets here. That being said, the filly who came and got her meaning is, I think a very nice filly who is, stepping forward. So perhaps it's just a case of running into that sort of foe. But Explorer, a very consistent filly, never worse than 2nd. Some of her defeats, by not all that far against, Bottle of Rouge, who came back to run well at Sunland, against Super Corridora, who wound up being named the champion of the division last year and who she finished ahead of last time out. So Explorer, in terms of her form, very hard to poke holes in her. I think if you're going to poke a hole in her, it's because of the pace setup here.
Yeah, and I'd be curious to see what Flavien Prat decides to do with having a more of an outside draw on the starting gate. We have seen several times that she does not need the lead to win, and maybe she is comfortable rating. Last time out was the first time she was really hounded and pressured around the track, and I would expect that with that compact field of 4 total. Now, the final filly in the field is the 10, Taken by the Wind, and you've seen a lot of Kenny McPeek speaking about morningline.io. That is our sponsor here for our content on the DRF YouTube, so we'll take a quick time out and get a word from our sponsor.
This video is sponsored by morningline.io, SEC-regulated marketplace where approved participants can trade licensed interest in racing's biggest stars. Be part of championship bloodlines. Just visit morningline.io. Buy, sell, trade, own the game.
So you mentioned it, Morningline.io. They're involved a little bit here with Taken by the Wind. She's the 2nd choice on the morning line, Nicole. And you talked about it earlier in the fact that she is has already several stakes wins under her belt. She's undefeated in 3 starts, and they've been sort of, having to work to get her into a race. They were able to do that last time out at the fairgrounds, and she was able to hold on. And for her, it was a test, right? Going a mile and 70 yards. And this will be another test. It's going to be her 4th start at her 4th track.
Yeah, and she has certainly shown so far that she doesn't have to take the track with her. 4 tracks in 4 different states beside. Last time out, she did lead early. I think she was maybe a little bit keen. It was her, that Silver Bullet Day in January at the fairgrounds. It was her first start since the prior September at Churchill. She did hold on over Love Your Neighbor, who came back to be a strong 2nd to divisional leader Bella Ballerina and the Rachel Alexandra a couple of weeks ago. I do think Taken by the Wind will be a little bit more settled this time. And with the caveat that, I have not seen her myself in the flesh. This is just from watching workout videos and race videos and, behind the scenes clips from the barn. I do like how she seems to have matured physically from 2 to 3.
Absolutely. And I think, when you look at the Silver Bullet Day as a whole, it was merry-go-round race. The only horses that flip-flop position were the 5th and 6th place finishers. And I think, Came down to probably race riding from Brian Hernandez Jr. No one wants the lead. I'm going to go for it. And that's why you saw those leisurely fractions of 25-3 and 50-1. So I wouldn't expect, based on what we saw in the time form pace projection and her previous races, she's not making the lead in here, I don't think, Nicole, based on what we've seen so far. So we will move to our top selections here for the grade 3 Honeybee. We mentioned it, Kentucky Oaks points on the line. And I'm a little shocked. We see this very similarly, and I felt like it was a really good race at Oaklawn on Sunday just because it is very competitive top to bottom. And we really just flip-flop here on the top 2. You will stick with the 10 Taken by the Wind.
Yeah, I do think, from that outside post, I think she could take over from Explorer on some of the other pace horses, perhaps on the turn. And I think your top selection, Newtown Pike, will be coming at her late with the pace setup.
Yeah, we have to hope for the pace setup. I think in terms of what we see on paper, the pace should be on the quick side. The quicker, the better, though, for the number 4, Newtown Pike. I thought she raced very, very well in the Martha Washington, and she'll certainly offer more value than others in here. So same top 4, different order for Nicole and I. 10-4-9-6 for Nicole, 4-10-9-6 for me. It is a Kentucky points race this Sunday at Oaklawn. Best of luck.